Good morning, everyone. My name is Derek. I'm one of the speakers here, but today we have Scott and Guy Theory, who's talking about profiles, especially in security related. As a moderator, just a reminder, fill in your survey at the end, hand it to me at the end. Enjoy and welcome to the third day.
Thanks, Derek. Welcome everyone to the session, DB213 for ZOS, using profiles to monitor a block unsecured TCP/IP connection. So as part of the agenda, I'm just going to give an introduction on the profile tables and what those profiles in the topic, and then Scott is going to deep dive on using these profiles and his experiences. Okay, a little bit background about me. My name is Gaya Chandran. I'm a security architect in DB2 for ZOS development at IBM Silicon Valley Lab. I started around DB2 version 8 development, and my first presentation was at idug San Jose in 2007. So if you remember Roger Miller, so he used to be my mentor, and he kind of guided me with that first presentation. And then I started presenting in 2016 again. Since then, I've been at this idug for every year, almost every year, except for one. And then I'm really passionate about discussing this, ZOS security topics with this community. Okay, now moving on to granular connection control. So today, applications come into DB2 from many different environments, right? APIs, REST APIs, different APIs, and cloud environment. So it becomes essential that you have, establish like a secure communication to DB2, right? But however, setting up that, the secure communication and migrating your applications to use that secure communication could be a challenge, right? Because, so not every application, because there's a lot of different setup available is required, right? You have to set up at the server side with your, set up at the server side with your network configurations and the racket security side with the certificates, and you have to do at the client side. So there's multiple different configurations required. In addition to that, in DB2, we have two controls, right? Like TCP already verified, that kind of gives you some control with what kind of authentication mechanism you want to connect with, and secure communication. And then you also configure your secure port subsystem parameter. But that doesn't give you the granularity that's needed to help with the migration of applications to use this secure communication. So what we did in version 13 is we introduced this profiles to monitor or block unsecured TCP/IP connectivity. So this kind of provides a simple approach using this profile tables where you can discover applications that are not using secure connectivity, and you can also enforce that applications to use this secure communications and authentication mechanisms. So this goes, it gives you control beyond the TCP/IP already verified parameters, and you can also enforce that. Okay, so how many of you are familiar with profile tables and using profile tables? Okay, quite a few. So profile tables, initially it was designed to use system profiles, which is for monitoring and controlling distributed communications, connections, and distributed remote threads. And then we enhanced this capability to also help set up special registers, global variables, and we kept adding more functionality to it. And then we also recently supported from DB2 version 13, you can also use profile tables for local applications. Okay. So for the profile tables, there are two active tables, DSN profile table and DSN profile attributes table. And these two tables where you define these profiles for what you want to monitor. And then the history table contains the status of the profiles that got started. Okay, so the enhancement for monitoring this connections in the profile tables is we added a new keyword, monitor product type connections for security. Okay, monitor connections for security. The product type is you can specify the different product types, what you want to use, like what you want to monitor. It could be a REST API connection, JDBC connection, or DB2 Connect, or DSN is for connections coming in from DB2Z requester. And then SPLAT is for any application requesters that's not matching the supported types, right? So initially when we introduced this support, it's for monitoring all DB2 connections. And then we added more enhancements to monitor more granularity on specifying the TCP IP address and subnet mask and auth ID controls. Okay, so the attribute parameter helps you to support attribute. You can specify what type of action you want to take on these policy requirements are not met. So you can specify that if the policy requirements are not met, you can specify to either allow the connection to go through but with the warning, or you can fail, you can give an exception. And then the attribute 2 specifies where you can specify the desired authentication mechanisms. For example, if it's 1, that means it's a basic authentication. 2 is basic authentication with MFA. So it's a different combinations. And 4 is client certificate. I believe 5 is client certificate with MFA. So it kind of gives you different options where you can specify the desired authentication mechanisms that you want the applications to connect. And then the attribute 3 is specifically applicable whether the connection must be specified with the ATTLS policy. It's really not applicable to 1 and 2, but it's when you're using anything related with client certificate, then that is applicable. Okay, so what are the different steps to discover and control this secure connectivity? So similar to any other profile, so you create a profile by inserting a row in the DSN profile table where you specify the filtering criteria, right? The filtering criteria that's supported, or you can specify location, and you can also provide filtering criteria through auth IDs, okay? Different filtering criteria. And then when you add a row in DSN profile attributes table. In this table, you specify that you want monitor connections for security, and specify, you just saw the 3 different attributes. So you specify different values for those attributes. Then once you have done the setup, then you issue a start profile command, which is going to start that profile, and then you can check the status of that profile in the history table. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, so initially we started with supporting all locations. There isn't any granularity there. Later, APAR PH57811 that enforced, where you can specify more granular location parameter. You can, specify subnet mask or IP fully qualified domain name. So you have more granularity there. Okay. And then after that, in APAR PH63652, we added support for auth ID granularity. So you can specify the filtering using the auth ID column, and then in that auth ID you can specify a fully specified name, or you can also specify some form of wildcard with this to identify the auth IDs you want to filter on. Okay.
Question.
Sure.
Can have auth ID along with the location on the same row?
Okay, so the question is, can I have auth ID along with location? Just hold on, I'm going to the next slide. Okay. Yeah, so that's the filtering criteria. You can specify location or auth ID column, but if you specify both, it's the location that takes precedence. We won't consider the auth IDs. It's not a combination of both. Okay. Yeah, so you can specify multiple security profiles, but the precedence is always the location, and then we take into auth ID into consideration. Even within the specific, like if you have the filtering criteria with the location, if you have a subnet mask and then a specific IP address, then if your connection matches that specific IP address, then that profile takes precedence over the generic one. So there is a precedence order even within a specific filtering criteria.
Even for single row?
Single row, for the filtering criteria, you can only specify like a.
One in a one row, I mean one column in one row. I'm saying that I inserted a row saying auth ID, SP, M Prasad Rao, and location is 1.1.1.
So you cannot specify both filtering criteria, location and auth ID.
So
you could do only.
Two different rows.
Yes. You had a question, Mark?
I was just going to say, if you do both in one row, it'll be rejected.
Right, yeah, that's what it is. You cannot specify both. Okay, question?
On that note, isn't it rejected or does it like go with the location instead of the auth ID?
No, that is rejected if you're trying to do in the same row.
For a location.
Auth ID, that's correct. Okay, so just to summarize it, so this is kind of like it provides you the ability to monitor and also like block connections that are not using the secure authentication mechanisms and SSL. It allows you, provides you an opportunity to move, an approach where you can migrate all your applications to use secure authentication mechanism and SSL connections. And so the initial one where we supported that came in earlier, but all these capabilities are now available in function level 100. What this verifying function level does is it just makes sure that if you're at that function level, you should have that APOR applied. So it goes by default, you get that functionality by that APOR. Okay? Okay. Yeah, sure, question.
When using IP address with asterisk,
Yes.
if you go to IDAA, it does not work. Do you have any idea why?
Not really. So maybe we can take it after this call. Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm passing on to Scott.
All right. It's kind of claustrophobic up here, so we're doing a little bit of a dance. So this is a little slide about me, tell you who I am if you've never heard me speak before or interact with me. I try to talk to everybody, so hopefully you'll get to talk to me during the conference. So I've been with DB2 overall for about 20 years, as a programmer starting out, and then as a DBA beyond that. And I like to have fun. It is day 3. I think we're all a little tired, but we're gonna have fun, okay? Promise you. All right, this is the disclaimer for my company. This says, listen to me, it's my words. Don't go to them, right? I might misspeak. And you've got experts in the room, just like Gaya and friends. So we're gonna get through this. All right, so she did a great job of introducing the topic, giving you just a refresher of the profile tables, kind of get our mindset into that. I'm going to do a deep dive into the conversation about this feature and hopefully answer all of your questions on that. All right, I told you I want to have a little fun. Let's see if you want to have a little fun. So disclaimer here, we're all friends. idug is one family, so no judgment, right? What stays in the room, what's in the room stays in the room, right? But I want to take a little time to kind of poll the audience, right? Where are we at on this whole journey of secure connections? So just raise your hand if you don't mind. How many people have a secure port defined? So many of you, okay? How many of you are on version 13? Okay, a little bit less. How about, let's jump to 504. and less of our friends are quite there yet, but we're all on that journey, right? Okay. All right, and then how many people happen to be using this topic? Are you using profiles and monitoring? Okay, good. Maybe they should speak instead of me. We'll find out. All right, so obviously if you don't have a secure port defined, that is what you're going to do first. So you're going to talk to your system programmer and they're going to go do stuff for you. I don't have the time or the energy or the knowledge to cover the stuff, but have a good conversation with them. I did do the BSDS work in 2018 to get secure port out there. I did do that. Another avenue you have is modify DDF. And the entire goal of your project by the time you're done is your TCP port should equal to your secure port. Okay? If you're totally clueless at this point, here's some hints, right? Of if you don't know where to go, here's a few documents I found that may get you started. Okay? All right. And she did a little intro on the progression. I wanted to kind of show the same material in a little bit different way. So we touched on the APARs that you need applied, and then the function levels that get you there. So in 13, there are effective function levels where you can say, okay, I'm at this point. I can go grab that APAR. I can talk to my friendly syspog and beg her to install that and see if she'll do that for you. The verifying function level says absolutely you have that, then you don't have to go ask the question of did you install that yet or not, or wherever you may be. I love speaker notes, so everything I've provided, if you get a hold of my slides, it's all there. All right, so we're gonna go through like the combination of what you need. So let's back up a moment. Let's say that you want to go try this out. You want to do this when you get home, right? What's your strategy? How are you gonna take this on? So you're gonna decide what combination of profiles that you need to create for yourself, and then how much noise do you want in the master address space, and how much can you tolerate, right, of that noise, the displays. And then when are you going to be ready to enable those profiles to start monitoring and seeing are you catching everything, right? And then lastly, at what point can you remove the TCP port, and how you do that is you make those values equal, okay? All right, this is what I chose to do. If you know my personality, I'm a little OCD. So I told my team when I was doing my testing, I said, give me the block of 5,000 to 6,000, let me do my thing. Please stay off my yard, right? So 5,000 is the range I used. I chose the number 5,000. You can choose whatever you want, right? And then I had subcategories so I could look in the master and know kind of which profile ID that I was actually glancing at, not have to go back to the table and try to figure that out, right, on the fly. All right, warning versus exception. What is that? So if you're a little new to profile tables, and especially this topic, what I chose to do in my testing was set warning diag level 3. That's going to generate a 775I message for you on every single warning that you see. The other ones, once I kind of had an idea of how the connections were behaving, then I went to warning diag level 2. What did that do for me? It gave me a 5-minute roll up so I could stop the noise, right? And be able to focus on the profile 5000 to see kind of what profile I might have missed in the monitoring during my testing and kind of go from there. I chose exception diag level 3, so I saw every exception if I happen to miss one. The goal is to do the monitoring first, and hopefully you don't get to the exception. All right, so again, on your strategy, what options do you choose? There's quite a few of them, and it gets a little confusing and complicated. This is the homework I did for you. We'll see what where you land in your requirements. So option 5 says that use a behavior of option 1 or 4. So they have to come in with the user ID and password or a passphrase to be authenticated, and then they have to use their certificate. The connection must be valid with an ATTLS policy, and then option 3 is kind of ignored at that point. And then option 1 that gets rolled up in option 5 means this kind of the same thing, that you're secured there. So that was a happy medium for me in my testing here. All right, and again, this is just kind of saying the same thing, like what messages of what. All right, so we had a couple questions already about location ID or auth ID. Which way do you want to go, right? So, you know, maybe you have a clue, maybe you don't, but we're going to get there. All right, disclaimer for my subsequent charts. I try to just make this super simple for you, right? So some of the column names may not be exact, right? I rename some of those. I do give you a sample query that I generated for these charts to simplify the conversation. And I am doing a table join just so I can see my stuff, right? All right, let's talk about IP address level first. So again, I chose 5,000 to be kind of the parent row. It's going to be in charge of doing the monitoring, the exception, all of that. All the subsequent rows below that are kind of the children rows, right? And are much more granular. So again, on IP address, there's a variety of things you can choose to put in that column. Giving you some examples there. I like gadgets, right? So when 13 came out, I saw this, I was like, oh, that looks cool. I want to go test this, right? What I found in this was monitoring by IP address. It was just more cumbersome than I wanted to deal with. And yeah, you can wildcard, you can do all kinds of fancy things within this, but it wasn't granular enough. And I think you're going to find auth ID to be a little better fit for you. And yes, you can use a combination. And again, what Gaya said, just to reiterate that, is IP address is processed ahead of auth ID. So when you're building your profiles, keep that in mind as well. And whenever I looked at IP address, I thought, okay, this is a cool feature because they gave you the where it's coming from. I want to know the who, right? So that's where we'll get into auth ID a little more. So once you kind of get this stuff set up in your environment, this is going to be kind of what a simplified version of what your profile tables are going to look like, right? So let's just kind of slow down a little bit and kind of walk through this. So here's your profile numbers that you're going to have. You can have a variety of combinations. You can't do both. We covered that one. Is your profile enabled or not, right? So you're probably already doing that stuff. Then your configuration. This gets into the choices that I made may not be the same as yours. Go read the documentation, try to figure it out. I'm trying to give you some hints on what I chose to do in my testing. So 5,000 is the controlling one. I let it decide, is that going to do the exception or the monitoring? So when I'm looking in the master, I can say, you know, what's going on and how I need to adjust the subsequent profiles. I highly recommend you use comments, right? Kind of a no-brainer there, but I want to call that out. So anytime I did anything, I put a date on there, I put my ID, that it was me, and I put the why. Because what happens and you get distracted on something else, you come back a month later and you're like, why the heck did I create that profile, right? Do yourself some kindness and your friends, put some comments in there, right? Again, it's claustrophobic up here, so I'm gonna do my best. So let's talk about, so we're at exception level now, so we are blocking. Jane is a good person, she's a friend of yours, so you're gonna let her through by giving her a warning, right? And then order app, let's go through this one. So you have the auth ID for your order app application, but you also know the IP address that they typically come from. But they could be a shared server with another application, and that's going to cause you implications with monitoring solely by IP address. Why did I choose to show you this example? Well, what if they come out with a server that you don't know about? They forgot to tell you that one, or maybe they don't know. So having this combination gives you the opportunity to have that auth ID covered in another location, so you're not going to break them, right? Less phone calls, the better, right? And then just an example right here is this one happened to be completely fixed, right? So they got on the good list. We're going to go ahead and disable that profile. The next one, the shipping application, they're still working on remediation. They don't have everything quite right. You're communicating with them. And again, kind of a similar example there. Bob did a good idea. He fixed his stuff. So we disabled that profile, and you want to clean this up. You know, your profile table should not be a giant landfill, right? So DB2 is relying on that information, put it into memory for processing. Try to keep this stuff clean. So once you know you're done, be done. So syshopper, that was confusing to me. What the heck is going on, right? And I'll cover that for you as well. And then the 5900s were the what do I do with this person or this IP? So I just kind of stuck them at the bottom until I could figure out the who or what, why I was seeing those messages. Then I could move that into the proper category. All right, so auth ID, just kind of reiterating what I said basically. And yes, you can use wildcards on this. I don't think I did much of that in my testing, but that is within the feature there. Did I forget anything? Yeah, I covered the IP address can be used by another ID. Oh yeah, here's a fun one. If you want to be really mean, you can block at an individual profile level, right? You don't have to let the parent profile drive that for you. All right. Again, the 5900s were kind of the leftovers of the ones I was working on in my testing. Yeah, and then I'd renumber them. And what I mean by renumber, you're way better off just creating a new profile, getting that out there for yourself, and then deleting the other one. All right, what the heck was the mainframe IP addresses coming through in syshopper, right? So that was a little surprise to me. It kind of, what the heck is this, man? So syshopper, they did a good job with the documentation here. I worked with IBM support to kind of clarify that. I feel like they did a good job with that. They did a better job than I could. So here you go. Again, go read the documentation. But to simplify this for the conversation today, when you see syshopper, no, that's not like a system programmer person or somebody in your organization. That means that that thread does not know that auth ID yet. So it's a placeholder. It's kind of just in the way that the transactions are being processed. All right, here's the list of the attribute 1 values. I just wanted to show you this and also show you the ones that I chose and why. This is a little chart that you're going to want to have handy and figure out what you want to do. And they do correspond to the specific messages there. So get familiar with this and make your plan, right? All right, so what do these messages look like when they come out? So I'm showing you a DSN 776I message. I believe, I'm sorry, I'm trying to read and talk and fit in this small space. So, all right, so this is exception profile, right? This is my 5000 profile. what is it telling me? It's giving me the user ID and the location they're coming from. Some of the messages are similar. You may see they're even kind of duplicated, but it gives you enough stuff that you can figure out to go make another profile, because you want to keep profile 5000 or whatever number you choose to be as quiet as possible, because that's the one that's finding the new ones that are coming about that you don't have accounted for, right? All right, every warning or exception on, this is the 5-minute roll-up, right? So once you're, you kind of know what's going on, you'll put a profile in for that, choose to roll it up. It just makes life easier. You don't go cross-eyed trying to read, through the master. All right, so now that you've got a plan, you've got your profiles created, what's your strategy for timing, right? So kind of walk through these same steps again, and then I chose in my testing to kind of monitor for a month. You should be able to figure out in a very short window which ones need adjusting, right? But you just want to let it sit there. Think of cooking and just kind of you put your stuff in a crock pot and you kind of just let it sit there, right? So you're gonna just want to let it sit, monitor, make sure it's good, and then you're ready to go to blocking, right? So you want to make sure you got things settled before you take that leap, and then monitor that for a while, right? You're gonna know pretty quickly, again, what needs to be adjusted. But give yourself some time and space to do this project. And then you're not done until, in my opinion, you're not done until your TCP port is equal to the value of secure port, right? And then you can, when I say remove, that's when you can talk to your Enterprise Z people that do the infrastructure and tell them, okay, I'm fully done with that port. Let's go ahead and just get it out of the system totally. And then once you're at this point, then that's when you're going to disable your profiles that are there. Keep them there, disable. That way that if you've got to go backwards, God forbid, then you're not scrambling to put all that stuff back. But again, you want to clean up after yourself, do some housekeeping there. All right, so yes, I gave you all the queries for my charts there. So you're going to get all these things set up, and that's going to be where you spend your time, is the configuration part of these profiles. And then no matter what you do, don't forget, just because it's in the table doesn't mean that DV2 is going to know about it. So when you do any of these actions, restart your profiles. So here's some example of an insert statement. So you're going to insert into your DSN profile table. This is where you're going to make your choice of, am I monitoring or blocking by location or auth ID? What's your choice? Again, the 5000, I let that be the driver, and then I did a wild card, just an asterisk to say, show me everything. It was enabled, obviously, and then again, here's my notes for testing. So, all right, so you got the main profile created. Here's the flip side of it. Here's the attributes that goes with that profile. So I've got an example for you there. This is where you choose your attribute 1, 2, and 3 to fully define that profile. And an update statement, once you're ready to move from warning and then move to exception, do that through just a standard update statement. Pretty simple, right? And then for the 12th time, document your stuff. Oh, and the reason I had that in here is because there are 2 tables, right, obviously, and 2 sets of comments, the remarks column. So if you're just OCD like me and you want to maintain consistency, do your update in both spots there. All right, delete. So once you're ready for that delete, you don't need that profile anymore, get rid of it. Okay, I think we're good. Here's the select statement that I built. I don't want to spend too much time, but I want to at least give you a glance at that. And all right, so we mentioned start profile a couple times. It's really a no-brainer. It's almost a non-event as far as in your plans. Anytime you do any adjustment, any change, start your profile, right? Yeah, and again, I've had a couple people ask me in my testing, like, when are you going to be done, right? When are you going to move on with something else to do with your life? Well, I'm going to tell them that's whenever I can do a display DDF detail and say that my TCP port is equal to the value of secure port. And why? Because my goal and your goal is going to be do that command in one screenshot. You can show an auditor or your boss, DB2 is secure, go bug somebody else, right? And you're not using a bunch of words like I do. It's just one pretty picture for them to say, leave me alone. All right, ideas. Let's spend a moment on AHA ideas, and we're doing really good on time from what I can tell. So if you've never done an AHA idea and you have a suggestion for DB2 development, you need to put something out there. And if it's something valuable to you that you think obviously you came up with the idea, you think it's going to help you advertise that. Get your friends to vote. If it's applicable to them, it makes sense. Yes, development does look at this extensively, and this filters into their strategy of their planning and their roadmap. So it's of value to do that. Again, as far as I know, I'm the one that came up with the auth ID piece because I saw the IP address. I knew what they were doing and what value that would do for the DB2 community. Again, IP gives you the where, auth ID gives you the who. I care way more about the who. So that did get implemented. And then a couple other ones that I'm hoping might make the cut. Let's talk about this one. So when you do your display, that result of that start command goes in wherever you issued that command. What I'm asking for is I do things, everybody has their own style, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. I choose to put mine in a JCL, that way I can keep record of it. If I gotta go back and look, well, all that information that DB2 says, yeah, we're cool. We did what you asked for, profiles are started. That goes in whatever mechanism that you are issuing that start profile command. What I'm asking for, stick something in the master so then everybody can see it and you're not having to look for it. Hopefully they'll take that on. This last one is some auditing stuff that I'm finding with profile tables, not just for this topic, but just life in general, right? What some enhancements that I foresee might help the community. And then I went back very recently and I said, give me a last used date. You have that on a few other tables, right, that we know and love and super useful. Don't make me read through the master and dig like an archaeological dig, right? Just give me a date. I'm happy with just a date on those tables. So maybe they'll take that on. If you find this of value to you, I'd appreciate a vote. And I really appreciate you showing up. We filled a room, right? I hope this was good for you. I appreciate you. idug, I'm very passionate about. If you've had a chance to talk with me, that's one of my things that I love in life. Again, Gaya is amazing. Thank you for stepping up. I'd like to call out Sarbender. We had quite the tennis match in an IBM case, and our IBM rep, he would go through the meetings and be like, okay, what's the status of each case? And I said, Ignore that. That's Sarbinder and I. That's our chatty conversation. Just ask me your question. So he did a lot of work, and also not only on the explanation and all of that, but also helping the documentation piece be what you need it to be, which was important. And also, of course, the people that did it, right? And then the AHA team that decided that my idea was cool. There's some people within my organization that have spent a lot of time with me on testing this and putting up with me and all my quirks. So their names are there. And then where am I going next, right? So idug is my passion. I had another couple ideas on presentations for next time. I want to call this out. It's not just a selfless plug, right? There is importance. There is a thing called New to Z community. And if you don't know about that, and you have friends that are newer, we've got a lot of experience in this room, right? Probably done DB2 stuff longer than I've been around or that I have in my 20 years doing DB2. Show them that New to Z community. That might help them get exposed to not only DB2, but Z as a platform, give them that exposure. I have an idea for a presentation. It's not technical, so it doesn't really fit an idug presentation, but it's how do you take an idea that you have in your mind, and yes, you all have ideas, you're all experts, don't lie to me. How do you take that idea and deliver a presentation that people want to show up and listen to you? And then at Tech Exchange, I'll be doing a recap of this presentation as well as this one. So if you have an opportunity to be at Tech Exchange, but anyway, idug is fantastic, right? So, all right, so we're good on time. Yeah. So, thank you. All right. So we got plenty of time to take some questions. Awesome, Brian.
So when you're monitoring all connections coming in, like according to whatever the profile.
Yeah, all the distributed stuff. So that master, the 5,000 profile, I call it. That's the one out there babysitting everything. And then you have more profiles below it that's more granular.
Were you doing anything like were you able to distinguish like people using the open port versus the secure port? That was like your objective, right?
Right, yeah, that's the whole point of this. So if they're coming
to know the difference with these connections?
Well, if you're seeing this, then, and they don't meet that criteria that you have in the attributes table, then they're gonna show up.
Oh, so it's like the second attribute 2 and 3?
Yeah, that combination of your choosing, yes.
Okay, so.
Right? So if they're not on my bad list, then they're okay.
So if your attribute says 3 says that it must use a HTTPS port. If it's not, then it's going to flag.
Right. And there's a lot of combinations. This is what I chose to do that I thought fit my testing case and that would fit the community. There's a lot of options out there, and it depends on where you're at in your maintenance journey. What are you trying to accomplish? Are you doing some fancy stuff in RACF? I think there's 8 different levels or something. So that was overwhelming to me. Don't give me too many options in life, right? When we're at a restaurant, give me 2 choices, A or B. So I worked with them on kind of finding what the right balance was. But again,
I just missed the details of that 2 and 3 columns.
Right. I probably got excited and talked too fast, but thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah. So just want to add to that, because DB2 knows whether this connection is from a secure port or from your TCP IP port. So if you set up your profiles correctly, then DB2 can detect that and won't give you the exception or based on the profile setting.
So the goal of it is for things to be quiet, right? And then you can move on to make those the port values the same. There. You have something else?
Well, I was using if kids, I think 365. to look at the locations and things.
Yeah.
But this seems like an alternative way. I was using that ifkit to track down who was using the secure web. This seems like an alternative method to
Right.
get that
And-
understanding.
And I should have prefaced that, I've lived my life on the application DBA side, not much of like system DBA. So for me, this was more advantageous, easier to look at process rather than running reports. And I could, you know, in my testing, I could babysit the master and it would just tell me what's going on. So,
Would,
yeah.
You know, just seeing all these messages go to master, would it be reasonable to ask IBM an RFE or something?
Well, that's why I want the last use date, because then you can look at that profile and say, okay, profile 65 got used yesterday. Profile 200 was used 3 months ago. Do I really need that profile for whatever
I'd like to
use
see the
case?
history of them. So I won't say like the ID and location for some of these, like the actual ID and location, so you can do your investigation.
But once they have moved to the secure ports,
Right.
why do you need to keep track of that?
No, the ones,
Right.
the things that are going to master the messages.
Okay.
You
So
want
instead of putting it the message in master, also put them somewhere else that's.
you want less babysitting, right?
Well,
And be able to
just
look
like
at a
reading
table
through
and
the
see it.
master is a
Yeah.
different journey.
Exactly. Yeah. That's that 5-minute roll up that will, keep you from growing cross-eyed. I think there was one over here. Yeah.
So, do the DBAs control the connection strings and things like that on all the app servers, or did you have to rely on the apps to make the changes
So
for the
that's
sec port?
going to be organization specific, who does what.
Mhm.
So
And yours, if you're willing to share that.
sure.
Yeah.
So as I mentioned, I'm DB2Z application DBA. That's where I live my life. I do know some of the system stuff. I do know enough to talk to a system programmer, and we'll figure out what I'm actually talking about. I think I do maybe a better job than I give myself credit for. The LUW side, the like DB2 DS driver, like that's not in my wheelhouse, but through learning and exploring and wanting to grow, I did learn more about that area of the connections, but that is where you got to set some things at. So that's going to be the source of where you make the ODBC changes, and then if it's JDBC, then you got to do some other parameters, depending on the tool, right? Because that's a little tricky depending on what tool they're using, because DB2 is awesome. It can take in connections from just about anywhere. So some of those are tool specific, right? But not 100%. But you have some nuances there depending on which topic. Does that answer?
Well, for your project though, who made those changes?
The whole combination of people. So first to any kind of like workstation or the people part, then in ODBC, that's going to be your DB2 LUW friends, most likely, that manage the DB2 DS driver, some of those things. That's just kind of, in the companies I've worked, that's been where that role landed. And then JDBC is kind of more of a user setup, so then you have to talk to them and make sure that they're good, right? Is that
Yes,
cover it?
yep.
Okay, and then, so then like, I foresee like the application DBA like me would, manage like the profile stuff, right? And then your system programmer might, or like I did in 2018, turn on that secure port in BSDS or modified EDF. So there's that piece. So that's kind of the roles. That might be a good slide for me to have for next time. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Kind of a follow-up on the JDBC.
Yeah.
So we know we can see what driver versions are being used,
Mhm.
tracing, accounting and stuff, but what about having the driver level be a factor in the profile so that we could manage secure port traffic below a certain level or above a certain level?
So I don't know if the profile tables are really where you want that information. So I think it's more of like the reporting stuff, like what Brian was touching on, like to really dig into IFKID 365 is what she's whispering to me, and I agree. So some of those places it's more appropriate to see that. If you have some of the tooling available to you, that will kind of pull out some of that information, and then you can do some reports on some of like the performance warehouse of the tool, whatever tool you're
I
choosing.
get that, but that's after the fact. That's not
Right.
That's not runtime
Right.
enforcement.
This is more of monitoring what's coming in live, which is going to be much more accurate than trying to monitor on the back end. And then also, like what he alluded to, what role is it, right? So if you're a DB2 person, it may not necessarily be your responsibility, or you may not care, you know, they just got to go fix their stuff, right? And that's kind of that partnership that you have with whoever you may be working with.
Thank you.
That help?
Yep.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
so basically,
Yeah.
I just want to
No,
add to
go.
that. So basically the use case for this functionality is we want all of your applications to move to the secure port and, you know, and use only secure port, right? That's the use case for this functionality.
Yes, sir.
Is there a security vulnerability while using the profile table? So I was just going through an article and it says if you use the admin command, import and export option, so we can kind of access some sensitive data which we are not supposed to do. So how does it look from the security perspective?
I didn't quite follow your question, did you, Gaya? Can you restate it maybe in a different way?
Okay, so suppose I'm not able to access a particular set of data, and if I set a profile table or tweak it, am I able to access such kind of sensitive information?
Not really, yeah. Profile table actually gives you more control on what you can control which application. So it doesn't do anything with, you know, looking at your data, accessing your data at all.
So
you still have that DB2 permission and things, yeah, it doesn't do anything.
So in a like kindergarten approach to this, what's in my brain is you have the Z-parms that are powerful and kind of control the system, right? The profile tables enable you to do some things there in a more granular approach. Is that
That's
a good
correct,
way of
right,
saying
right.
that?
Yeah.
So think of it as like a baby Z-parm in a way.
Because your Z-Bombs is system-wide, right? So if
Yeah.
you want to control certain parameters, then you go to profile.
Anything else? Anybody? All right. Thank you guys. Appreciate it.